When people talk about the classical world, they think about Greece, Rome, maybe about China, perhaps about the Axiom Empire of Africa. But what was going on in South America? And what can we as fantasy world builders draw from those cultures of the classical South American period? That is what I want to talk about today. Welcome to another episode of Eras Defined by Just-in-Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. If you like what I do here, please do consider joining the channel for these cool perks and giving this video a super thanks if you find particular value from it. If you want to get something back for your support, check out my epic fantasy series, The Sangwheel Chronicles, available for sale at multiple online bookstores. Okay, enough of that. Let's crack on. The religions of South America often revolved around appeasing the gods and seeking their protection. Many believed that the gods were powerful, unpredictable, and sometimes angry. By performing rituals and offering sacrifices, the people hoped to maintain the gods' favor and prevent their wrath from destroying the world. For an example of this, we can look towards the Moche civilization, which existed in present-day Peru from around 100 to 700 CE and practiced ritual bloodletting and human sacrifice. These offerings were thought to ensure the fertility of the land and to protect the people from natural disasters. This means that the priests could claim victory every day that the sun rose. They could say that what they did was necessary because the sun came up in the morning. An angry God flips your society on its head. People aren't praying for help, they're praying to be left alone. This kind of civilization works really well if you have a tyrannical force in your world that needs to be placated. And then the conflict in your world and your story can come from overthrowing that tyrannical force to stop the necessity of placating it. Of course, not all South American gods were angry, but it only takes one to fuel a religion based on blood sacrifice. So, if you want to tell that kind of opposition to a tyrannical god story, take a look at the cultures and religions of the classical South American period and use them for your inspiration as to how such a society might develop and how they might placate that tyrannical force. So thumbs up if you enjoyed that little discussion of the religion, and let's talk about keeping track of the days. The South American civilizations had seriously intricate and sophisticated calendars. In the classical period, South American civilizations such as the Mayans and the Aztecs, the timing of human sacrifice was often determined by their very complex calendar systems. These sacrifices were seen as essential offerings to the gods, ensuring the continuation of life and protection from these natural disasters. For example, the Aztecs believed that the sun god, Huitzilopochtli, I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, advice is welcome in the comments down below. So the Aztec sun god required the nourishment of human blood to maintain his strength and continue his journey across the sky. The Aztec calendar, known as Tonolopohuatle, was a 260-day ritual calendar divided into 20 periods, each associated with a particular god or goddess. Human sacrifices would be performed on specific days that were considered auspicious for the deity in question. The Mayans had a similar take with their calendar. They had an extremely intricate calendar that observed the Cholquin, a 260-day ritual calendar that combined 20-day names with 13-day numbers, creating a unique cycle of days. Important religious ceremonies, including the sacrifice portion of this, were planned according to the Tzolk'in calendar. ensuring that these offerings aligned with the will of the gods and the cycles of the cosmos. In a fantasy world, that kind of intricate calendar system can be used to create a unique sense of time, and it can take your reader truly into your world with the expressions around time and the usage of the calendar. You can also use your calendar to highlight certain celestial dates or magical events that you put into your world building that you want the reader to understand, but you don't want to tell them about. You can use the calendar to show them. And of course, those who keep the calendar, like priests and scholars, would hold enormous power, especially if that calendar determines human sacrifice. Then you have this incredible power over your society because you keep track of those dates. Of course, I would say that I do love my special timekeeping devices, and I made a video about them, which you can check out in the information card. That one was specifically on time of the day. So if you would like me to do a video about calendars and how to design them for a fantasy system, leave a comment down below. Okay, hit the thumbs up for calendars, and let's talk about some cultural elements from the American classical civilizations. Many South American civilizations, such as the Olmecs and Maya, played a unique ball game that involved a solid rubber ball and some kind of goal on a wall. This game had religious, social, and political significance, and the players often risked their lives for victories. Courts for playing this game are prominent in all the cities of the Southern American civilizations that we have found. So it was used pretty much everywhere. I referenced this game in my video on how to create a fantasy sport, which you can check out in the information card. Art is another important part of culture. Weaving was a significant form of artistic expression in South America. The people created intricate textiles that depicted their beliefs, their myths, and their everyday lives. Ceramics, too, formed a core part of art, as I spoke about in my video on ceramics in a fantasy world. Now, it is important that with both weaving and ceramics to remember that if you're describing a scene, this is also a world-building opportunity. You can show the reader your myths instead of just telling them about it. Of course, agriculture goes hand in hand with civilization. In South America, they created some pretty advanced water management systems to thrive in their diverse environments. The Inca, for example, built terraces and complex irrigation systems to grow crops in the Andean landscape. So water would flow one terrace to another, dug out of the side of the Andes Mountains. So you have a lot of elements to draw from there. If you're getting inspiration from South America for your cities, I definitely suggest inventing a sport and leaning into cloth-based art like tapestries and clothing. And also check out the agricultural techniques they used and how those techniques would influence the common lives of your peasants. Before we discuss magic systems and so on that I think would fit well into these worlds, I would like to go down a slight rabbit hole and talk about the Nazca Lines. The Nazca Lines are located in the arid coastal plain of modern-day Peru. They are enormous geoglyphs which were created by the Nazca people between 500 BCE and 500 CE. They consist of a series of lines, geometric shapes, and animal figures that stretch for miles across the landscape, with some figures measuring up to 1,200 feet in length. These enigmatic designs can only be fully appreciated from an aerial perspective, which has led to a lot of speculation about their purpose and meaning. The plain where they are drawn is dry and sees minimal wind, resulting in the lines surviving all these centuries. They were created by people making depressions or shallow incisions in the desert floor, removing pebbles and leaving differently colored dirt exposed. Maria Riesch formulated some theories as to how the lines were designed. She speculated that the Nazca used wooden stakes attached by rope They set the stakes as a guide in a straight line, and this technique allowed them to repeat the process and draw very long lines and shapes. So that's the how. But why? That is a different question. Some theories suggest that the Nazca Lines were created as a form of astronomical observatory, with the lines and shapes representing constellations or marking important celestial events. Others propose that they were used for religious or ceremonial purposes, with the geoglyphs serving as sacred pathways for processions and rituals. There are even some that claim that the lines were something to do with irrigation and point at a location of ancient water sources. In a fantasy setting, something like the Nazca Lines could be created as messages to beings who are capable of flying, or they could be the remnants of a lost civilization with knowledge of advanced technology or magic. The Nazca Lines might also serve as a vast enigmatic map, guiding those who can decipher its secrets to some kind of religious understanding to diffuse the rage of the gods. I definitely look at them and consider incorporating something like the Nazca Lines into a fantasy world built on South America. And if you enjoyed this little interlude, hit the thumbs up button, and let's talk about magical and fantastical elements that would suit this kind of world. First up, blood magic. This could be a prevalent and powerful force in your fantasy world, with rituals and sacrifices of the ancient civilizations taking on an even greater significance. In this world, blood could be a source of untapped power, and those who learn to harness it can unleash extraordinary abilities or forge potent magical bonds. For instance, the moche civilization practiced this ritual bloodletting. It could be reimagined as a means of communicating with ancestral spirits or drawing upon the power of the gods. Similarly, the Aztec tradition of offering human hearts to the sun god could become a ritual that imbues warriors with supernatural strength and resilience. And if you need help designing a blood magic system, check out my thoughts in the information card. But you don't have to stick to just magic. Continuing on the blood theme, vampire-like creatures might roam this fantasy world, seeking the life force that sustains them. These beings could be feared and respected, with some societies even viewing them as divine or otherworldly, becoming that tyrannical force that I spoke about. The presence of vampires and other bloodthirsty creatures would add an element of danger and intrigue, as well as present moral dilemmas for the people who must coexist with them. Jim Butcher has the Red Court of Vampires of the Dresden Files in South America, and very much tied into the rituals of human sacrifice. I also did do a video on the history of vampires if you need further inspiration along those lines. Of course, where there are vampires, there is probably some kind of were creature. But in South America, your were creature is much more likely to be a were jaguar than any kind of wolf-based creature. Jaguar warriors or jaguar knights were members of the Aztec military elite. They wore this jaguar skin and called themselves jaguar warriors because they believed that the animal's strength would be given to them during battles. Jaguar warriors were also used to capture prisoners for sacrifice to the Aztec gods. To become a jaguar warrior, a member of the Aztec army had to capture a total of 4 enemies from battle. This was said to honor the gods in a way far greater than killing enemy soldiers on the battlefield. For a warrior to kill an enemy was considered clumsy. Based on this, you could build a shape-shifting race that actually can shapeshift after capturing their enemies and spilling their blood to the gods, thus unlocking their shape-shifting abilities. So definitely take a look at shapeshifter creatures as a fantastical option. And then in terms of sacred artifacts, art, and magic, I would look toward woven cloth once again, or ceremonial masks also, particularly those crafted of pottery. Also consider the elaborate feather headdresses worn by the Aztecs and Inca rulers. These could be symbols of divine authority, or they could actually be magical items that imbue the leader with some kind of authority. I would say that the two most defining traits you should think about when designing magic for a civilization inspired by South America is angry gods and the resulting potential for blood magic. That would be my key takeaway. And those are my thoughts on classical era South America. If you want to support the channel, links to the books down below or join button for these cool perks. And if you enjoyed this video, check out Creating Were Creatures in a Fantasy World. And I will see you soon for another episode from Just in Time Worlds.